Have you ever wondered what happened to Pontius Pilate, the man who sentenced Jesus to death? His name is forever tied to one of the most pivotal events in history, but few know the tragic end of his story. In this video, we'll uncover the life of Pilate, the critical decisions he made, and how his actions not only changed the course of history but also sealed his own fate. Pontius Pilate's story is a powerful reminder of the consequences of compromise, fear, and ignoring the truth. As we explore his rise to power, his role in Jesus' trial, and his ultimate downfall, you'll gain deep insights into the dangers of moral weakness and the importance of standing firm in what is right. This video will challenge you to reflect on the choices you make and their spiritual significance. If you're ready to learn about the tragic end of Pilate and the lessons his life holds, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let's share this important message with others who need it. Now, let's dive into the gripping story of Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate was appointed as the Roman governor of Judea around 26 AD, a role that placed him at the center of a politically and socially charged environment. Judea, at the time, was a region under Roman control, and the Jewish people were deeply dissatisfied with foreign rule. There was constant tension between the Roman authorities and the Jewish population, who longed for freedom and self-rule. Pilate's primary responsibility was to maintain order, collect taxes, and suppress any signs of rebellion. His job was not easy, as there were frequent uprisings and disputes, which made governing Judea a delicate and challenging task. Pilate's character, as recorded in both historical and biblical accounts, paints a picture of a man who was ruthless and unyielding in the face of resistance. His actions often reflected a harsh approach to governance. The Jewish historian Philo described Pilate as having a blend of self-will, violence, theft, assault, abusive behavior, and unfeeling cruelty. This suggests that Pilate wasn't particularly sympathetic toward the people he ruled. He made decisions based on power, often showing little regard for the feelings or customs of the Jewish people. His reputation for cruelty made him a figure of fear and contempt, and it likely contributed to his difficulties in governing Judea effectively. Pilate was appointed as governor by Roman Emperor Tiberius, likely because of his military experience and political connections. As a Roman official, Pilate was expected to keep peace in the region, but the challenges he faced were immense. The Jewish people were deeply religious, and their devotion to their faith sometimes clashed with Roman customs and beliefs. Pilate, who represented the power of Rome, had to navigate these tensions carefully. His methods of dealing with the Jewish people were often abrasive, and he was known to provoke them, leading to several conflicts and scandals during his rule. As governor, Pilate's authority was absolute, but he was still accountable to Rome. His primary concern was maintaining the peace and ensuring that no rebellions occurred under his watch. However, his actions were not always well received, especially by the Jewish religious leaders, who saw him as an oppressive foreign ruler. Pilate's clashes with the religious elite were frequent, and his governance often fueled resentment and rebellion. His reputation as a harsh ruler meant that he had to walk a fine line between keeping the peace and respecting the delicate political balance in Judea. Pilate's approach to governance was also influenced by his need to prove himself to the Roman Empire. He had to demonstrate that he could maintain control over Judea, despite its volatile population. This led to some unpopular decisions, such as using the temple treasury to fund building projects, which sparked outrage among the Jews. His attempts to assert Roman control over religious matters, such as placing Roman standards with pagan symbols in Jerusalem, only further alienated the Jewish population. Pilate's inability to effectively balance his duties and the growing unrest contributed to his eventual downfall. Pilate's tenure in Judea was marked by failure to win the favor of the Jewish people. He was eventually recalled to Rome due to complaints from the Jewish community and the constant instability under his rule. His time in office became a cautionary tale of how unchecked power and disregard for local customs can lead to failure. Pilate's story serves as an example of how difficult it was for Roman authorities to govern a region that was resistant to foreign rule, and it highlights the complexities of his role in the history of Israel during the time of Jesus. Pontius Pilate's role in the trial and death of Jesus Christ is one of the most pivotal and tragic moments in history. Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, was tasked with maintaining order in a region that was politically unstable, with a Jewish population longing for freedom. His role was not just as a political figure, but as a man who would be caught in the tension between his own sense of justice and the demands of the crowd and the religious leaders. The accusation against Jesus was that he claimed to be the King of the Jews, a direct threat to Roman authority, which made it necessary for Pilate to address the situation, even though he initially found no valid reason to condemn Jesus. The Jewish leaders saw Jesus as a threat to their own power and needed Pilate to make a decision that would allow them to eliminate him. Pilate, when questioning Jesus, found that he was not guilty of any crime deserving of death. Jesus' answers were not those of a rebellious king, and Pilate could find no legitimate charge against him. Yet, despite this, Pilate was unable to make the decision he knew was right. Faced with immense pressure from the Jewish leaders, who were demanding Jesus' crucifixion, and a volatile crowd calling for his death, Pilate felt cornered. His famous gesture of washing his hands in front of the crowd, Matthew 27 verse 24, was an attempt to symbolically absolve himself of responsibility, trying to distance himself from the decision. Yet, despite this act, Pilate's actions were clear. He allowed Jesus to be condemned to appease the crowd, even though he knew it was wrong. Pilate's decision was influenced more by his fear of political unrest than by a genuine pursuit of justice. The Roman Empire had placed Pilate in charge of Judea, and his duty was to maintain peace in the region. He understood that if he failed to quell the growing tensions among the Jews, it could lead to rebellion, which would jeopardize his position and possibly his life. His concern about maintaining order outweighed his concern for justice, and the fear of losing control led him to make a tragic decision. In the end, Pilate chose to condemn Jesus to death rather than risk a riot or lose his power. The lack of moral courage demonstrated by Pilate is one of the most tragic aspects of this story. Although Pilate knew Jesus was innocent, he allowed fear and political pressure to dictate his decision. Instead of standing firm in his role as a judge and upholding justice, Pilate succumbed to the demands of the crowd. His inability to make the right choice in this moment reveals the dangers of allowing power and fear of consequences to cloud one's judgment. Pilate had the opportunity to free an innocent man, but he chose to protect his position instead, making him complicit in an unjust death. The crowd's influence on Pilate's decision was a critical factor in the outcome. Despite Pilate's personal misgivings, the crowd's relentless demand for Jesus' crucifixion left him with little room to maneuver. When Pilate offered to release Jesus as part of a Passover custom, the crowd chose to release Barabbas, a notorious criminal, instead. The crowd's anger and demands made it impossible for Pilate to resist, and he ultimately gave in, sentencing Jesus to death to avoid a possible rebellion. The pressure from the crowd shows how easily justice can be swayed by public opinion and how dangerous it can be when a leader fails to stand by what is right. Ultimately, Pilate's failure to act justly in this moment led to one of the greatest tragedies in human history. As a leader, he was expected to uphold the law and maintain peace, but instead, he chose to disregard justice to avoid a political crisis. Pilate's decision serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of compromise in leadership, especially when it comes at the expense of righteousness. In the end, Pilate's actions that day were driven by fear and self-preservation, leading to the unjust death of Jesus and the loss of his own moral authority. Pontius Pilate's decision to condemn Jesus to death stands as one of the most tragic moments in history. Despite his personal hesitation and his understanding that Jesus was innocent, Pilate ultimately chose to listen to the demands of the crowd and the Jewish leaders rather than following his conscience. Pilate's role as governor placed him in a difficult position, but he knew, deep down, that Jesus had committed no crime deserving of death. The moment Pilate sentenced Jesus to crucifixion, he made a decision that would change the course of history and seal his tragic fate. This decision was not based on justice but on yielding to the pressure of those around him. Fear and political pressure played a significant role in Pilate's actions. He was aware of the volatile political situation in Judea and the power the Jewish leaders held over the people. Pilate feared that refusing to condemn Jesus could incite a riot or lead to greater unrest. The Jewish leaders cleverly manipulated this fear, pressing Pilate to take action. Their demand for Jesus' crucifixion was not about justice but about maintaining their own power. Pilate's decision shows how easily fear can lead to compromising what is right, and how political motivations can overshadow moral responsibility. His failure to stand firm and uphold justice in the face of external pressure highlights the dangers of yielding to fear. In the aftermath of sentencing Jesus to death, Pilate likely felt some level of regret. Though he tried to distance himself from the responsibility by washing his hands in front of the crowd, the guilt of condemning an innocent man likely haunted him. Pilate's regret is evident in the way he tried to absolve himself of any wrongdoing, but it could not change the fact that he had played a pivotal role in Jesus' crucifixion. Pilate knew that Jesus posed no real threat, and yet he allowed the pressure from others to drive his decision. This internal conflict reflects the deep tragedy of his actions. He understood the innocence of Jesus but chose to disregard it for the sake of maintaining his position. Pilate's actions also reflect a broader issue of moral compromise. By prioritizing his own political survival over the life of an innocent man, Pilate demonstrated how fear and the desire for power can cloud judgment and lead to tragic consequences. His failure to protect justice for Jesus is a cautionary tale about the dangers of compromising one's values for convenience or self-preservation. Pilate had the power to do what was right, but he chose the easier path of acquiescing to the demands of the crowd and the religious leaders. This choice ultimately led to the death of Jesus and marked Pilate's legacy with deep sorrow. Despite the regret Pilate may have felt, his decision is irreversible. His choice to condemn Jesus, knowing he was innocent, demonstrates how the pressures of leadership can sometimes cloud moral judgment. Pilate's story highlights the importance of standing firm in one's principles, even in the face of opposition or pressure. His tragic failure serves as a warning about the dangers of compromising integrity, especially when the stakes are as high as the life of an innocent person. Pilate's tragic decision is a powerful reminder of how fear and political pressures can overshadow the truth. Pilate's actions, driven by fear and a desire to maintain power, led to the unjust crucifixion of Jesus. This moment is a turning point in history, and Pilate's role in it is a lesson in the importance of moral courage and the consequences of compromising one's values. The regret he may have felt afterward does not change the fact that he played a key part in one of history's most tragic events. After Pilate's involvement in the trial and condemnation of Jesus, his life took a downward turn. Historical records indicate that Pilate's tenure as the governor of Judea ended after he was recalled to Rome, possibly due to his mishandling of various conflicts in the region. His inability to manage tensions between the Roman authorities and the Jewish people, coupled with his controversial decision regarding Jesus' trial, seems to have played a role in his downfall. Pilate's decision to yield to the pressure of the crowd rather than uphold justice may have made him unpopular, both with the Jewish population and with Roman officials. His inability to navigate these complex political waters ultimately led to his removal from office. Some historical accounts suggest that Pilate's return to Rome was marked by disgrace. It is said that he faced criticism for his actions in Judea, and his failure to prevent Jesus' crucifixion may have contributed to his loss of favor in Rome. According to some sources, Pilate was either executed or forced into exile as a result of his failed governance. While historical details about his fate are unclear, it is evident that his actions had long-term consequences, not only for the people of Judea but also for his own life. Pilate's tragic decision left a stain on his reputation, and his legacy has been forever tied to the unjust death of Jesus. Pilate's role in the crucifixion of Jesus has had a lasting impact on Christian thought. In Christian theology, Pilate is often seen as a symbol of human responsibility for the death of Christ. Despite his personal belief in Jesus' innocence, Pilate's decision to condemn him is seen as part of the larger divine plan for redemption. Pilate's actions, or lack thereof, highlight the moral and spiritual complexities of human nature, and they emphasize how fear, pressure, and political expediency can lead individuals to make unjust decisions. His role in the crucifixion has been interpreted as a reminder of the weight of choices, particularly when one is entrusted with power and authority. In the Christian tradition, Pilate's involvement in the crucifixion has led to a complex portrayal of him in art, literature, and theology. While some view him as a tragic figure who acted out of weakness and fear, others see him as a symbol of the broader human tendency to compromise principles for personal gain or safety. Pilate's actions are often seen as an illustration of how even those in positions of authority can fail to stand up for what is right when faced with pressure. The question of Pilate's moral responsibility has remained a subject of debate in Christian thought, especially regarding the nature of human culpability in the death of Christ. Throughout history, Pilate's name has been remembered in the context of the crucifixion. In the Apostles' Creed, a central Christian statement of faith, Pilate is mentioned as the one under whom Jesus suffered. This reflects the theological significance of his role in the Passion narrative and serves as a reminder of the historical and spiritual consequences of his actions. Pilate's involvement in the trial and crucifixion of Jesus has become a defining aspect of his legacy, influencing how he is viewed in the Christian tradition. Pilate's life after the trial of Jesus was marked by downfall, disgrace, and a tragic end. His role in the death of Jesus has had a profound impact on Christian theology, with his decisions being remembered as part of the larger narrative of human sin and divine redemption. Pilate's fate serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of failing to stand firm in the face of moral challenges and the dangers of compromising one's principles. His legacy is one of tragic responsibility, and his name remains tied to one of history's most significant events. In this video, we've explored the tragic story of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who condemned Jesus to death despite his personal understanding of Jesus' innocence. Pilate's decision, driven by fear and political pressure, ultimately led to his downfall. His fate serves as a cautionary tale of how compromising one's values for the sake of personal safety or public opinion can lead to devastating consequences. Pilate's life after the trial, marked by disgrace and possible execution, shows how our choices, particularly those made in positions of power, can shape not only our own lives but also the lives of others. Pilate's story invites us to reflect on our own lives and decisions. How often do we face situations where we are pressured to go against what we know is right? Pilate's actions remind us that standing firm in our convictions, especially when it's difficult, is essential. We must ask ourselves, am I willing to make the hard but right decisions, even when others may pressure me to do wrong? It's easy to give in to fear or to seek comfort, but true integrity and faithfulness require standing firm, even when it feels uncomfortable or unpopular. The story of Pilate teaches us valuable moral lessons about the importance of personal responsibility and the dangers of yielding to external pressures. Pilate had the opportunity to do what was just, but he let fear dictate his actions. As we navigate our own lives, we must be vigilant and avoid allowing fear or the opinions of others to compromise our principles. Pilate's example warns us that the consequences of failing to stand up for what is right can be far-reaching and irreversible. At times, we might be called to make decisions that are difficult and unpopular, but choosing truth and righteousness is always worth it. Pilate's tragic story serves as a reminder that, in the end, our actions matter more than our comfort. When we compromise our convictions, we may gain temporary approval or avoid confrontation, but we lose the peace of knowing we acted with integrity. Our choices define who we are and who we become. As we reflect on Pilate's role in history, it's important to remember the eternal significance of our decisions. The Bible reminds us that the consequences of our actions are not just immediate but can have long-lasting effects on our spiritual journey. Mark 8 verse 36 asks, "What will it profit a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul?" This powerful verse underscores the importance of prioritizing righteousness over worldly gain, emphasizing the eternal nature of the decisions we make today. In closing, Pilate's tragic story offers us a profound lesson in moral courage and the importance of standing firm in our beliefs. Let us strive to live our lives with integrity, even when faced with pressure or fear. May we always choose righteousness, knowing that in the end, the truth will prevail.